All signs are pointing towards an Index 2, aka codename Deckard, on the horizon from Valve. What I'd like to talk to you today about is not about data mining of Steam VR or about the wonderful work by Sadly It's Bradley covering the convergence of the Steam Deck to Steam VR into use for VR presence, which the Steam Deck does not have, so it's showing what we're going towards. But I want to talk more about the actual concepts of spatial computing and how it is in the VR, AR, MR landscape, and what I think kind of Valve needs to get right. Because that's kind of the best thing I can get my hands on is use cases, concepts. And as a reminder, I've been in the VR community since 2017 doing community development and experiences from myself, making lots of friends. And I can tell you that that's my experience pool. I don't build hardware, I use it, and I also build experiences. So that's what I'm trying to stick to, what I know best, and then talking about what I'd like to see from that hardware to make my experience and those of my friends better. So I have one small request. If you have anybody who likes this type of content, please share this with them if you get something from it, and be sure to use the chapters to jump around. So if you feel that one topic I'm covering you already know very deep and it's just surface level, jump around and I guarantee you will find some new concepts in here that challenge your understandings of VR, or at the very least, they offer a differing viewpoint. Also note, there are fireworks that are endless. I've tried as best as I could to wait as long as possible to make this, and I don't think CVOX is going to cover it all, but I'm going to dang well try. So let's power through this. So as a very young technology concept, spatial computing to me is kind of the combination of the best parts of VR, the best parts of AR, the best parts of mixed reality in general that tries to combine the two specifically, but has specific experiences into one kind of melting pot. Forgive the expression, but it reminds me of the Powerpuff Girls intro or something silly like that. But let's demystify that a little bit as our first step here. And specifically, what would be the Index 2 / Deckards get right on spatial computing? Because that seems to be where they're going. Onboard computing is mission critical to get this done. You need to be able to detach the cable, and not in a wireless method. It needs to have at least some form of basic computer on board, like say a Steam Deck on the front of your face, in order for it to operate in the way that really we expect of spatial computing. There needs to be a Steam OS that's probably Linux-based, which is what all of the data pulls so far are pointing towards. And that Steam OS maybe not needs to be this most robust thing, but it needs to be able to do productivity type programs as well as video games. So we need to move away from just video games and lesson learning experience type environments and such and test beds, and move into a world where you can suddenly pull up emails. You can actually chat back and forth in a video conference. And you can have these interesting experiences where you can maybe have a 3D video conference with multiple other people with headsets. So if people that are working from home, people that are operating in an environment that may not be the best, like it does not have conference rooms and such like that, being able to all be in your own offices, but you're still virtually over into one place. Or I could picture a global company applying this. That's the only reason I bring those examples up is because I don't see this being successful as a spatial computing concept if it's just appealing to gaming. I'm not saying don't appeal to gaming. I'm not saying creatives and gaming and everything else that's like that. More on creatives in a little bit. And that's kind of the point, that there is these business use cases, education use cases, gaming use cases, and creatives all rolled into one operating system, all playing in the same sandbox. And what you choose to purchase, install, or use freeware of all changes the entire experience based on what you need. But at the end of the day, the Steam VR backbone is much more robust than it currently is. The Steam Home would be an environment that you'll be very, very comfortable in and be able to queue up at any moment, just like you do now, but it would be maybe less recognizable than you think. There may be office environments that are set up that are set up by your company's policies, and only certain sources can be seen by certain people. I talk a little bit about that in my my teaser trailer for my AR series, which apparently, because I called it the augmented reality series, I guess it's outdated now because spatial computing is going to become the new hot topic. But a lot of the elements of that are still in play. What you choose to name it and what you choose to make the core principles are still at the end of the day going to have the same concepts. Who gets to see what, when, and what runs on this system? And is the system wireless or not? And furthermore, can it process on that system? These are the things that must be good on the hardware for this all to even have a chance of being used as a platform for proper spatial computing and bring developers flocking to the system. There's other things you need, but these are the basics. Development of content in the HMD inside the headset. We must have the ability to develop new content for VR, AR, MR, spatial computing within that OS system. And this is something critical because right now, when you run a program in Steam VR, basically it takes over the system and you can only run that setup. Now, there's plenty of workarounds. You can get plugins, you can do workarounds that are mods, you can have these really interesting flat panels that can pop up anywhere. But at the end of the day, they're all limited. We need a proper operating system that runs underneath everything and constantly is able to be basically the equivalent of an Alt-Tab, where you just make a gesture control with your hand or with maybe your eye in the future, once eye tracking is more common. Hopefully that's on the Deckard. And you can literally just focus in on the topic at hand and then immediately go back to having fun or immediately go back to talking with your friends or jumping around to that next business meeting. Without the right price point, plain and simple, none of this matters. What we have found with the Apple system being priced at $3,500 USD and probably higher once you factor in VAT taxes and other things like that in other countries, we need to factor in the price point. Valve has shown that they are willing to sell the Steam Deck at a good, better, best model, where there's a price that's the lowest, a price that's a midpoint, and a highest price point. And they have slightly better hardware on the inside. They have extra accessories. They have software that's a little different. That's a little perk for being the best system that you purchase. But at the end of the day, they're all solid systems. And I believe that a good, better, best model for the Deckard may be a good idea, but perhaps more likely there would only be two different price points, because keeping inventory in place for the Deckard, aka Index 2, will be extremely difficult for a very long time. There's a lot of pent-up demand. There's some people who skipped out on the original Index, still sticking with their Vives, or they moved to the Quest 2, and then some of them love it, some of them regretted it. And they weren't that pleased with the later releases by Meta, anecdotally, from what I've heard from friends that have the Quest 2, and they've been kind of like sitting on the fence, not wanting to buy an older piece of hardware like the Index for $500 USD, plus having to worry about lighthouses and will they work with the newer system once it's finally released, and kind of just sitting on the fence going, yeah, I'm willing to spend the money, but maybe I'll wait. So I think there's also a elephant in the room here where we think of supply chain issues. We think of adding an entire Steam Deck, which right now, as of recording, the lowest Steam Deck is just under $400 USD on sale during the Steam Summer Sale. And this is in July 2023 that I'm recording this. And I can't help but think that that's probably the best case scenario. And in fact, I would prefer if they had something that's a little more recent on the hardware, slightly upgraded processor, because it's going to be stuck in that headset for probably the next 5 years for most users. So having something that's a little more robust, can keep up, would be great. I also think of something more efficient is the key word in a lot of cases. You see, when you put something on your head and it's running the system itself, it's going to chew up a lot of battery. So, if you're running a CPU that, say, has 15 watts you're running and it's an all-in-one system, even more demand on the system, you're going to need something hyper efficient. Probably something more like a laptop CPU all-in-one chip that does the CPU and the GPU on the same thing, And once again, does the Steam Deck magic with shared memory and everything else, but in a way that is as future-proofed as possible, that doesn't chew up a lot of battery. You're asking a lot of things from one headset. But I do think if anybody could pull this off, it's going to be Valve, and they certainly have their price ceiling. This is 3,500 USD. They're not going to go anywhere near that. So if I was to take a wild guess, I would probably say at the max, it would be 1,500 USD for the super high-end one, and then they'd probably have a model that was below that, sitting at probably about 1,000 USD. And I'm going to dig into a little bit about why I think that's not as abhorrent in pricing as you think. I'm not saying it's amazing. I'm not saying that's great. But I think you got to remember that this is going to have the processing power likely of an entire Steam Deck bolted into it, on top of brand new hardware with better lenses, with brand new pancakes displays. It's going to be incredible, the combination of these lenses with the displays and everything. Sorry, pancake lenses on top of brand new displays, to be specific, before I get skewered in the comments. And one of the things I think that could definitely help with that would be prescription support. So I believe that we have gotten to the point now where if you could produce a headset like the Deckard's Prism series that they have long been hinting at in some of their patents and some of the technology that people have covered very well, I believe, this is an extreme view, I believe that both headsets, or whatever amount of headsets that are released, will have the ability to add your prescription in without special lenses. Suddenly now, people with glasses will not have to wear their glasses, will not have their glasses bumping into the inside of the headset, and even worse for people, when you have a headset that has good field of view, you don't have enough room inside for the glasses, or you have to adjust the field of view outwards as much as possible and lose field of view, so you don't have as much advantage in like a shooter game or a sports game or something. I think that the smartest thing they could do is have eye tracking, and also with possibly foveated rendering, and have some trickery in there where most, not all, but most prescription lenses could be built into the system. So it would trick your eyes into seeing. So if, let's say, you had near vision in one eye and distance vision in another, that was basically operating separately. So plus in one eye and minus in another. Basically, what I believe you could do is have software trickery that would help change that, where you could actually make it feel like you're wearing your glasses and viewing the experience. I don't think it would work for everybody. I don't believe it would work for every single type of prescription lens. But even if they could do the equivalent of, I think of like family back in the day when they would pick up readers at Walmart or something, like just cheap readers or something that were close to their prescription, not perfect. I think that would open the door to a lot of people, especially casual users, to get into the game and try it out when they're over a friend's house and realize, oh, wow, this is great. Now, yes, would they have to know their prescription off the top of their head or be able to view that somewhere? Yes. But maybe we could even have a test where you know the basics of your eyes, and it could run something through, like some type of little utility app that would allow you to test that. Although I strongly would feel that it would likely be more likely that you would have to actually type those numbers in, or grab your controllers if you have them and enter them. And one other thing is that I know that seems like a pretty preposterous thing for some folks, but younger people more and more are going online to get their prescription glasses. I have friends who have done this, where they literally will buy the glasses, they get the prescription, they know the numbers, and they don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a pair of eyeglasses, so they go online and they get $30 glasses. They get them fulfilled online, and that's it. In order to do that, they need their numbers. So more and more people are becoming aware of their numbers, and I think that would be really interesting, once again, if you could have prescription support built into the system without having to have special lenses made up, without having to have an entire third party or the company itself selling special lenses and trying to fulfill all these different stocks of plus this, minus this, changing out all sorts of of components and oh well, technically it's this, all software based for a vast majority of eyeglass users. And then suddenly a massive group of people can enjoy VR better, or should I say spatial computing better. And I think that would be a huge opening for them. And they would start taking the cue that the code word here is going to be spatial computing equals everything that the problems with VR were fixed. I tried VR years ago over a friend's house once, trying to play Beat Saber, and I got motion sickness. But this spatial computing doesn't make me have that. More on that in a while. But I tried with my glasses and it wouldn't fit. But this system does. Spatial computing fixes all these problems. Like I could see this being a watershed moment for all of these experiences because suddenly there's an ability to rebrand. And if you get it right, you get this right, suddenly people will be coming out of the woodwork in droves to purchase this product, especially back to the price point, if there's price points for multiple groups of people. And once again, not having to buy 100 plus USD of special lenses just to wear the thing, just because I wear, if I wore eyeglasses, I think that would make it much easier for me. And once again, these headsets may cost something, some serious amount of money, but if they include enough value addeds, I see them as extremely, extremely valuable. And I see that price as that much easier to understand. Another thing, speaking of third party, is that we need to have third party accessories on day one that are ready to go. So some people will have unique face shapes. Some people will have very small faces, for example, and they're going to need certain kinds of gaskets. So if Valve is not able to provide for those folks, the plans should be out there, which they did a little bit of with the Index, and they need to do more of that with the frunk and the gasket and everything else, and all the tech specs for it, and the actual .stl files for everything. So third-party manufacturers will have a lead-up time where they will be able to produce in numbers third-party accessories that maybe Valve didn't even think of. Now, Valve did try this with the frunk, where they put a USB port on the front of the Index, and very little was done with that, to be honest. I think mine still sits with its plate off just to help with the heat. But other than that, that USB port's not used. It is exposed, but it's not used. But I would like to see some third-party accessories for whatever technologies the Deckard has. Another thing that comes to mind is specialized music headsets and specialized microphones for people who sing, perform in VR, AR, MR experiences, and of course, spatial computing. And this will go deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole as people start doing video conferences, especially if they're trying to do presentations to large groups or teach a class. Suddenly that microphone has to be dang, dang good, especially at noise canceling. It's not just about having a good microphone, but I'm speaking into a pretty good microphone, but it needs to be able to noise cancel if you're doing things like that. And even the best microphones need to have some reasonable software backing them up to knock out things, maybe not as explosive as the fireworks around me tonight, the day after July 4th. But they do need to be able to control a lot of normal noises from pets, from family, from friends, etc. And also, more importantly, focus on the person at hand. It's conducting the performance, it's conducting the education, it's conducting the meeting, and being part of that. And really, I think that's an important part, is that and give people confidence that their voice is being heard. It's another key thing about any of these experience areas. And into spatial computing, I think that would be a great way to start it, is have an excellent microphone system. Or if you can't justify putting that in there, once again, we go back to price point. Let's talk about having a reasonably good microphone and have third-party accessory, say, for example, something as simple as a 3.5 millimeter jack that's available, and it's just set up for the microphone. And the software is designed to accept that. As soon as it clicks in, it's good to go. And a USB port to power it with phantom power if necessary. So let's go into some very specific things, basically back on the old research that was done by Valve when they were releasing the Index. And let's see what kind of like a report card. Let's talk about like where they're at and where they're going. So there was a concept called VR legs that was coined by Up Is Not Jump. So pretty big YouTuber in the VR space. Up Is Not Jump has some excellent synopsises of games, but more importantly, he has a lot of excellent topics he covers in those reviews and those topics covering VR. And one of the things he describes is VR legs, where basically games that require a lot of walking around, whether it's through a controller or you're physically walking, if you're lucky enough to have a room size space to work with, or even just teleporting. There's a different level of sustainability you'll have playing through that experience when there's a lot of motion and a lot of things as you gain experience in VR. So to sustain yourself long term in a game, you really want to start with something smaller that's not going to make you move around a lot. Beat Saber on easy or medium mode, for example, is a great example of something to get yourself started on, because you literally stand there and you might go side to side slightly or move you can just duck your head. So the thing detects that you're getting out of the way of a small object, and then you just hit the boxes. And then you can upgrade to, say, teleporting. Like, I think of games where you teleport, where you physically point the controller at something, you tell it you want to go there, and then you accept the thing by letting go of the button, the teleport. And that is an example of that. I think of games like Budget Cut that is excellent for that. Budget Cuts is a great example of a teleporting VR game that allows you to kind of slowly kind of dip your toes into the movement aspects of VR. And then when you start getting into deeper VR, you get into VR chat, which, yes, it has teleporting and has multiple types of motion, which a lot of games do, by the way. But VR chat I put in the more advanced side because there's a lot of experimental worlds that you will be dropping through, falling through. There's a lot of times where you will teleport back and forth to other worlds and have to accept that and jump around. And it can be very disorienting. People will walk right up to you to hug you or something like that, or greet you. And basically, those things can be extremely disorienting when part of your vision or all of your vision is occluded for a moment even. And I found that VR legs take a while to get, but once you get them, they never leave you. It's not like it's kind of like riding a bike. It's not like a perishable skill, other types of skills. But your mind needs time to wrap around that. And I see this once again, spatial computing needs like an on-ramp to VR legs. So, and I think it's fair to leave it as VR legs. I think it deserves that recognition that there's the forefathers and the ancestors, let's call it. It's more friendly to this. The ancestors of spatial computing, the great statues we have built of the men and women who trudged before you and suffered a lot of queasy effects to make the experience that spatial computing better. It would be pretty cool to say. And the real progression is there, and you should feel satisfying, but it should be essential to accessing these newer things. And this all leads to Valve itself having its concept of frictionless technology. So Valve has price point as one of their main tenets, is that they need to keep the price reasonable to have access. But one of the other things that they've really pushed is the concept of frictionless access to new technologies. So the idea is that the more hurdles, no matter what they are, whether it's technology-based, price point, setup, cost, learning, like a learning curve, all of these different things can ease of use. These type of things can make it so it's basically impossible for someone to basically, it's so insurmountable somebody wants to return it or give up on this technology and let it grow dust in their closet. That's not good enough. We need to have the core identity of frictionless technology needs to be realized if Valve is going to release an Index 2/Deckard. It needs to be able to be accessed by people that haven't done VR before, AR or MR experiences. And to me, the VR legs is the most critical part of this. It's the rosebud we have to solve. We have to discover what that is and figure that out for each individual user. And I think that the simplest answer is to provide three different games that have extremely, maybe two that have extremely good easy use, and then one that's an intermediate level of VR legs, basically. And every single player gets them. This is going to be like the Tetris of this game, or of this game system, or basically the product that always comes with everything. I see these as important. One could be a board game type technology with a social atmosphere. Once again, trying to ease people into the idea of visiting each other and making friends in VR and catching up with friends in VR slash AR slash MR experiences. And I think that another one could be a adventure game. And then finally, your intermediate game could be some sort of maybe a martial arts style game that has maybe some archery aspects to it or something like that. I think that these would make the most sense, and these are just examples off the top of my head. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that there needs to be these staple games that everybody has, and they have another hidden benefit. By having these games, you kind of have the onboard Windows aspect games. There are games like, when I say the word Minesweeper, and for some, when I say the words Chips Challenge, people immediately think of these games. Think Ski Free. When I say these games, people just nod and they just go, oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember that back from 95. I remember that from 98. Yes, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but I remember those games, and so do many others. And just like Minesweeper and the others before it, I see these all these different games as essential, because now we have the opportunity to make this brand new experience, and everybody would have a couple games with it. Once again, it would also add to the value added to when people buy this. And this goes without saying, and I may catch heat for saying this, but I believe the Index 2 should also come with Half-Life Alyx, just like the Index 1 did, as a free game. Because Half-Life Alyx is an amazing game, and it's another way to pin this really together. But back to the three free games. I think it should honestly come with every single Index 2 slash Deckard, and I think it should also become free for all Steam VR users. To once again, you have this ready-made small community, but they are fervent community, and they are a tight-knit community that will suddenly be available for people to visit. And I think if they start seeing all the extra benefits of spatial VR, where they can see some of the technologies that they start talking about, and their friends start saying, oh yeah, I'm also doing, I'm not just playing games on this, I'm also doing my work. I'm also doing my schoolwork. I'm also doing this. And when they're sitting in those three free games and they suddenly notice that there's facial gestures, they suddenly notice that there's new abilities to track hands and things like that, and other new technologies. It could be a showroom for this system to people that have older VR headsets, and kind of make them feel like, I want to be part of this. I want that energy. I want to become part of this new system. That's how you build this. Nothing is truly free. And I think that core identity, though, of frictionless access to the community, of access to the system's hardware, of access to progression on VR legs, can all come together and kind of create that positive buoyancy that this system will need to really realize what it can become. And once we get there, this is a little down the line, but I wanted to put this in here. I try not to hold back on these type of discussions. Back to my recent video about Ballard's telepresence concepts and the idea of transporting the spirit at the speed of light over fiber optics and such. Yes, they're a little early. They were. But we have systems that run on fiber right now. Big screens, HMD. We have technologies that are getting closer and closer to this concept of really transporting the spirit, the person, without transporting the body. And There and Back Again. I should have wrote by Bilbo Baggins on here, but but There and Back Again. It kind of feels like that to me. I kind of have these pleasant thoughts of the future and my past, and where I've been and where I'm going. And I feel like there needs to be certain levels of identity that's embraced by the system. We need to start having a common social hub that's outside of VR chat. And I'm not saying get rid of VR chat. I'm not saying that. It's a fine platform. I love it. I will never get rid of it. But what I do believe is that it's time for Steam VR, if it becomes its own Steam OS, to have a common social atmosphere that embraces the full picture, not just gaming, not just one-off experiences, but this larger picture of what people are doing. And you can flag yourself for public or private, just like you can on the Steam friends list right now, but it needs to be far more deep. Like, as in, if I'm developing in Blender and I'm working on a new avatar for myself, I can flag myself public and my friends can drop in and see what I'm working on and see my new avatar and give me tips on it or ideas or, hey, that's great, and just chill with me, or maybe bring their own files along too. This all needs to become more and more seamless. And I'm not saying this has to be day one, but this is down the line. And I do believe that they need to make the Steam VR home atmosphere and approach far, far more robust. VR chat should just be one more option in a list of options, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is wonderful. I love Steam. I love Steam VR home system. I feel it needs to be far more robust, and it needs to kind of embrace the Steam OS that's in 3D, not just a flat panel OS. Um, Kind of marry the two, and then also have products like Steam, like Steam VR, still support VR chat and other development systems. And once again, big screen, and even down to some of the technologies that are coming down the pike, I'm sure for Apple. I really hope that Apple allows Steam VR to function on the Vision Pro. It's going to be really tragic if people spend that kind of money and suddenly they cannot develop for Steam VR, and they can't even at least run it. So I've got a lot of thoughts about that. So there is some rights I think that need to be universal. I believe that if we're going to truly turn VR, AR, MR experiences into a unified front as spatial computing, these companies have one shot at this, to rebrand it into something that's approachable to everybody, more inclusive than ever for all sorts of uses and people. And honestly, the easiest way to do this is allow each other's systems, their apps to run. For goodness sake, allow a compatibility modes between the Apple products and the upcoming Steam products. At the very least, if Apple can allow Steam VR to run, and if Apple can develop for Steam VR, so there's sort of some vice versa there, I think this would be a lot better. I am nervous for the future. I am very worried that a lot of people that are not into VR, AR, or MR will buy an Apple product, and they will be trapped in that walled garden without any methodology to get out aside from that. And I feel that that's unfair for them. I feel that they should have the ability to hang out in their walled garden and all embrace all the coolness of that. And it does look amazing as a spatial computer technology. But I do believe that we need to recognize that there's going to be more than one company running this space if it's truly going to succeed. And I believe that those people will have, I believe spatial computing should be a universal right, that those people should have access to each other's app store, for lack of a better term. And I don't even like that term. I really don't like it. I feel like, though, there should be some level of compatibility, as long as it's safe and it's secure, a methodology to be able to take each other's type of best and brightest and be able to sell to each other. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying get stuff for free. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever or not the best thing. I'm just saying there needs to be a fairness to consumers. And that, to me, is mission critical for this to take off. If it's going to take a single article in a big newspaper for people to read, I spent 3,500 USD and I can't do anything with this product, and it's Apple's own fault that it's like this, and no one will buy them, and they're not going to blame Apple. What really sucks is they're going to blame spatial computing, and it's going to become an albatross around the neck of the entire system. And I'm not saying it's going to happen day one, but it'll probably be a year out. I hate to say it, but I'm very, very nervous about this. And I put this in here because I'm worried about it, and you deserve to know. I've always promised I don't hold anything back in these if it's relevant. So that's kind of my Deckard must get right list. I don't really have a conclusion, to be honest. I wrote the word, but there's been a lot of edits in this video because even with CVOX, I did some test runs. The explosions were so many and so numerous that there's a lot of edits. So I'm already pretty deep into this. So let me just wrap this up in the simplest way possible. If the Index 2 / Deckard is at a reasonable price point, and it has some value addeds like prescription support, third-party accessories are available and not being fought by Valve, and something I should have put on here, but they have some solution to lighthouses that does not involve lighthouses, or they are upgraded in such a way where they're more reasonably in price, I feel that this thing will succeed. Additionally, to succeed to a larger audience, though, and bring in what we really need is to grow the community that is right now tied up in virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality concepts into this spatial computing pot that we can all live in. It must be able to run on its own operating system. Fortunately, it seems that Steam OS that is being run on the background on Steam Deck and kind of supporting everything on there and serving everything has a ton of VR integrations going on. And the sensor systems on board have nowhere near, and also the way to present to you through, a VR aspect are basically non-existent, and they will not be in the future on the Steam Deck. That it must be at least an attempt at testing to see if a VR headset, AR, MR, and now called spatial computing headset, will be able to function with this system. I think that there is a very high likelihood that this is basically a test bed for this. And if we can develop content inside the headset, it will be a home run. So if you have an operating system that can allow you to work in it, you can go to school in it, you can play games in it and chat with your friends and do all sorts of social stuff with it, and then you can develop your own content. That's the key. We desperately need more content, and reigniting that passion at every single level from, the kid in high school all the way up through an adult who knows how to make a game and suddenly wants to take this passion on the road to be an indie developer. We need every level of experience and knowledge into this world. And even better, if once you start cracking that egg of education and work in this system, properly in this system, not just one-off experiences that are set up in a study hall, not just one-off experiences that are set up for a show of technology day at a work site or something, or at a conference. Actually have it set up so you can jump on it and do all of your productivity work in there. You will suddenly see new types of development flourishing in the spatial computing space. And suddenly a lot of technology will be put into there. I could definitely see a lot of 3D models getting done of brand new consumer products. I could see everything from the production of automobiles being put into there, and aircraft, aerospace engineering, all the way down to simple things like being able to work in a warehouse with more safety envelope and large warehouses, and be able to easily find products quickly. I could definitely see this as what HoloLens wishes it was, and at an affordable price point. So if an employee smashes this thing, it's not the end of the world. In addition, by having the Steam OS be able to work in a frictionless atmosphere that keeps at least some level of the identity of Valve from the beginning, of having that frictionless necessary and having an on-ramp to VR legs for newcomers, I see this as a home run in general. And if you want to really just pitch that no hitter, I'm banging out metaphors here, but if you really want to really impress me, I'll just keep it simple. You need to keep the consumer in mind and try your best to extend the olive branch to Apple, get them into the Steam VR option landscape if at all possible. And suddenly now there's two different options. And the Index 2 is the Windows slash Linuxy background, and it's technically a Linux product that Valve is developing, and based on that. And then the Apple product is, of course, the Apple identities jump into spatial computing. And remember, we have seen it in Apple and Windows right now that the best possible solution for both of them is if they play nice with each other to at least to a certain extent. And by the way, one of the big things I can think of off the top of my head is having VR calibrated, so 3D experiences in browsers, for example, being able to see those and being able to work correctly in this spatial computing atmosphere is going to be critical. So a browser, for example, that's a party that's neither one of these companies that we can download, and then it can run DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine, I'm not advocating for one, but whatever company you want, and you can embrace, will make people feel far more comfortable in this and not like locked to Safari or SteamOS browser 1.0 or whatever the heck they come up with. I think that's fine to have the native browser. It's not fine for it to be the only browser. And this is just the tip of the iceberg on hundreds of design decisions that need to go right for this to feel right. It has to be nailed the first day, first minute. It has to at least have the bare bones there where people can see, wow, I can spend time in this. I can have conference calls in this and feel that my information is secure. I can have I can let my kid go to high school in this thing, and I'm not gonna be worried, that this thing's gonna blow up on their face. I think that's a genuine point I've heard more than once is, are the screens going to cook my eyes? Are the is the headset, if I give it to my kid, is he going to be able to break it in a millisecond? That's another thing that they're going to have to prove, is that these things are robust. And remember, the marketing is going to heavily be factoring in people that are not used to HMDs, because they have to. We're a very small crowd, folks. The people that are into VR, AR, MR right now is extraordinarily small. I mean, just to give you some perspective, VR is the biggest audience. AR is the second. MR is basically a combination of the two. And honestly, there's even more smaller, nuanced groups. But I'm just trying to stick with the common groups and give them each a nod as they deserve. And honestly, I think, once again, spatial computing is more of just a combination of the whole groups. They're never going to go away. So that's all I got. That's my conclusion. I hope that ad hoc conclusion was good enough. Hopefully you didn't hear too many fireworks. Reminder, please share this with those that you think would appreciate it. That's all I ask. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.